Good morning, Related ISG. This is Craig Studnicki, your CEO and your real estate broker. I'm here today to present the Q3 update of the Miami Report as promised. Now, the results of Q3, which ended September 30th, are in fact very different from Q2, very different from Q1. We live in a very dynamic real estate world in a fast-growing part of the United States, and things are changing. Some for the better, most for the better. But in some ways, I think we're all going to have to gather our heads together in the coming weeks and strategize how we're going to navigate during Q4 and these very competitive waters, which is kind of grounded by incredibly tight inventory, be it condos or be it sales. Let me walk you through it. It was only about a month ago, Forbes magazine came out with a story that said real estate experts say a market correction is coming to South Florida. Now, I read that story, and when I read the headline, I thought, what in God's name can they possibly mean? We're living in the hottest real estate market in the history of South Florida, ISG, the original company that I'm also CEO of, that's been around for 30 years. RelatedISG has been around for 10. Either way, I've never seen an active market like I have in 2021. Grounded by so many people coming to South Florida and the lowest mortgage rates we've ever seen in the history of the U.S. So what in God's name can Forbes possibly mean? A market correction usually is not good news. Well, here we are now in the middle of October, and having read the results from Q3, I think now I know what they meant. It's not all bad, but it is something you need to be aware of. Here we go with the snapshot of inventory for both condominiums and single-family homes. Now, what we've done this time is we've simply combined all the inventory with houses and condos and put them together for Dade County, for Broward County, and for Palm Beach County, South Florida. Now, the reason we put them together, I think it's easier for us to understand what's going on with supply, and I think this is what Forbes was referring to. The amount of inventory for sale is now hitting historic lows, with very little in the supply pipeline to replace it for the coming years. Let me explain what we mean. Look at Q4. Q4 was literally 1 year ago, October, November, December of 2020. The combination between houses and condos active in MLS was close to 35,000. Well, it dropped a lot by Q1. By the end of Q1, you were down to just around 25,000. That's a serious reduction in inventory in just 3 months. And then by the end of Q2, it dropped to 19,200, way off from the end of Q4 of last year of 35,000. Once again, this is what Forbes has been zeroing in on. Inventory has been dropping at a really, really fast rate, which causes, particularly with single-family homes, the prices to really rise. And perhaps a slowdown in sales because of the lack of choices. At the end of, and now we're at Q3, you're at 18,686, a little lighter than you were at the end of Q2. So we're starting to see a leveling off of supply. Are we seeing an increase in supply? No. Slight uptick? Maybe. A further reduction? In houses, no. In condos, yes, which is tightening the grip even more on supply. How did we get here? Well, let's look once again at what was going on in Q4 of last year. 1 year ago, look at this chart. For every 9 transactions, most of them dominated by houses, you had 1 new listing. 9 new sales, 1 listing, causing available inventory to drop. In Q1, for 8 new sales, you had 2 new listings. Sales were clearly outpacing listings. By Q2, for every 7 new sales, you had 3 new listings. Okay, so listings are starting to come back, but it's still dominated by sales, causing inventory to drop. Then by the time we got to Q4, or Q3 rather, the quarter we just ended, welcome to equilibrium. For every 5 new sales, you had 5 new listings. Every 5 new sales was not necessarily dominated by houses anymore. Condos and houses started trading almost equally. But the good news is that you are kind of back to supply equilibrium as it relates to MLS transactions. For every 5 new sales, there are 5 new listings, kind of explaining the leveling off of inventory. But nevertheless, we're still dealing with very low inventory. Once again, this is kind of what Forbes was referring to in terms of a market correction. And they kind of indicated in their article that we would probably see a reduction in sales velocity for 2 reasons. One is because there's not many choices for people to buy, particularly with single-family homes. The inventory of houses are for sure at an all-time low. Historic low, history of South Florida, no matter how far back you check MLS. Condos, not so much. There's still a little bit of inventory in condos. We're going to explain that in a little more detail in just a minute. But the other reason is COVID. The COVID buyer has retreated. Any of you that have friends in New York, I'm sure you're hearing and seeing what I'm seeing. They're having a bit of almost a renaissance. There's a strong rebound in the interest in purchasing real estate, be it Manhattan, Brooklyn, the boroughs. Real estate's undervalued, kind of where we were a year ago. And it's New York. We all knew New York was going to come back. We all just didn't know when. Well, when is here? It started right after Labor Day. People started going back into the city, and they were buying undervalued real estate, probably between $1 million and $2 million, which, if there was South Florida pricing, we're talking about $500,000 to $1 million. And the momentum has picked up, and it has picked up. For those of us that enjoy watching sports, you're probably watching college football on Saturdays or professional football on Sundays, and you're noticing what I'm noticing. The stadiums are packed. Very, very few people wearing masks. Now, it's as if the United States has said we're done with COVID, and we don't see so much of that COVID buyer anymore. And so the retreat of the COVID buyer, the person running down to South Florida to buy that COVID house, that kind of stopped. And I know you know that. It's okay. There are other sectors of market demand that are continuing to come and new ones that are about to come. But the lack of choices, that's probably the biggest reason why your transactions have slowed down. Look at the amount of sales that were made in Q4 last year. Close to 39,000 sales in Q4. That's the most real estate sales that South Florida has ever seen in a given quarter. Palm Beach County, Broward County, Dade County. By Q1, it dropped to just under 30,000. Still pretty strong. By Q2, just under 30,000. We were all having a hayride. We were all working really, really hard, I know. But the demand and matched with decent supply created the best real estate year many of us have ever seen in general real estate. But look what happened in Q3. From Q1 and Q2, it dropped by half. 15,000 transactions against 30,000 in Q2, against 30,000 in Q1. Why did sales slow down? The COVID retreat is the smaller part. The lack of choices is your bigger part. It kind of tipped the rental market into a whole new stratosphere, as you will know. If someone's looking to rent a house or a condo, they're paying exorbitant prices in rentals. In part because, once again, there's not a lot of choices available in MLS. And what concerns me, for us, is this inventory a situation isn't going to change very much. We have to strategize how we're going to navigate in Q4 and beyond, because tight supply is something that we're all going to be living with for a while. And I'll explain why. That's MLS. Now let's go to new construction. We always like to talk about new construction. Actually, when we started the Miami Report, it was always about new construction. Condos that are currently under construction, condos in the pipeline. We reversed it because of RelatedISG's interest. We spent a lot of time focusing on MLS activity, which is what we just spent a little bit of time on. Here we are now with the results of the inventory that was developed in this past cycle which began in 2012. Now there's 631 units remaining to be sold. Coconut Grove to the south, Fort Lauderdale Beach to the north. This is almost all of them have been delivered, of all the buildings that were built in the past cycle, except for 12 or maybe 13. This graph shows how many of those buildings will be delivered this year, next year, 2023, 2024, and then 2025. The list of all these projects, without going through them one by one, let me help you out. Most of them are 80% sold. Now, I can assure you that most of these sales are not investors looking to resell. These are genuine end users, a lot of second home buyers who don't intend to put these units on the market once these buildings are finished. So don't expect that we're going to get a shot in the arm with a lot of inventory from these projects because it's just not there. There are 7 new buildings that will be delivered this year. LD Sace, in fact, in Edgewater, has already been delivered, as has 57 Ocean on Miami Beach. Next year, 4. 4 new buildings coming to South Florida. Again, 80% of that inventory is already sold. In 2023, Mr. C, 1 new building is being delivered. That project is 95% sold. And then followed by 2024, 0. For all of calendar year 2024, 0. Una in Brickell is scheduled to be delivered in 2025. There's some rumors, some conjecture that may slip to 2026. But for the moment, we're going to leave it at 2025. Folks, that's it. Related ISG, please listen. That's the only inventory. 20% of that inventory might get added. We'll be able to sell the end of this year. Next year, we can still sell. We can sell it all right now, in fact. But you're not going to get a lot of that inventory going into MLS. So when I tell you that we're approaching a little bit of supply shock, not just with houses, but with condos, and that there's no relief in sight for the next few years, these numbers say so. Yes, there's some new projects that have been announced, and we're going to talk about the new cycle in a second. But those projects won't be finished until 2026 at the earliest. So what do we do between now and then? We compete with all of our competitors as best we can with tight supply, recognizing that the demand curve is not slowing down. People will continue to come to South Florida. So we've got to find a way to deal with tight inventory. I always like to talk about this. This is my rule of thumb that I've learned over 40 years in real estate. When any given building or buildings in a certain submarket or neighborhood fall below 10% in MLS, you're in a seller's market. If you're 10% or more, you're in a buyer's market. Simply put, a lot of choices. Carolina Gertz, your executive vice president, at the end of Q2 said that by the time we get to the end of this year, you're going to see most condos in most submarkets in a seller's market, which means that less than 10% of the total units that were ever developed in this past cycle, less than 10% will be in MLS, and that's what tips it into a seller's. She also said that by next summer of 2022, you'll probably see condo sales selling just like houses are. List price plus, few contingencies listed in the contracts, driven mostly by very, very tight supply and nothing in the pipeline that can immediately take the pressure off of the low inventory. 'Cause let's remember, most of the folks that are moving here to South Florida, they're not looking to wait 3, 4, 5 years to move into a condo. They need it now. They want it now because they want to enjoy South Florida now and they want to enjoy the beautiful climate now and they don't want to wait. So Carolina's forecast on supply, therefore prices at the end of this year and by Q2 next year, I agree. We highlighted Coconut Grove and Fort Lauderdale because those markets have now fallen below 5%, flat out in a seller's market. You're seeing prices of some brand new buildings selling significantly more than what the developer sold them for. As an example, Park Grove Tower in Coconut Grove, a related project in joint venture with Terra. Beautiful, beautiful property. Coconut Grove is a very, very active market these days. And the units in that building are reselling at a substantially higher price than the developer recorded for. More of that is coming. This simply shows where people are buying condos. You know, some of us might like Sunny Isles, like myself, where I live. Some of us may like Fort Lauderdale Beach, where others live. But, you know, the buying public always tells us the truth. They tell us where they prefer to be. And once again, through the end of Q3 this year, Brickell Avenue, that's still the most popular condo market in all of South Florida. Coconut Grove to the south, Fort Lauderdale Beach to the north. All submarkets put in combined, Brickell wins 1 out of every 3. When you get this chart, when you get the Q3 update that Sandra Arguello will provide all of the related ISG agents, take a look at Edgewater. I mentioned this last time, and it continues to grow in popularity. It's almost a little over 25%, 1 out of every 4 of the sales that took place in Q3 are taking place in Edgewater. Great value, yes. In addition, Edgewater is becoming kind of popular. It says so in the sales. Sales tell us everything. The news cycle. Well, by the end of Q2, I think I identified 3 or 4 new projects. Now, look, we have 8. 8 new projects of what we at Related ISG, what I refer to as a traditional condo. A traditional condo is a condo with serious rental restrictions. It's the kind of condo where you can enjoy quiet and peaceful enjoyment. Those are the condos that people live in year-round or as second homes, not short-term rentals, not condo hotels. I think at the end of Q3, as I said, I think there were 3 new Q2. There were 3 new buildings. Now there's 8. Look at this list. It's great to see because it's exactly what we need in South Florida. I just wish there was a way that we could build some of these condos in record time. The short-term rentals. Normally, we never really touch on this, but we have to because just in downtown Miami alone, look, there are 5 new short-term rentals, Airbnb, condo hotel properties that have been announced, most of which will start construction next year. Some, like Nativo, have already started construction. And would you look at this? These 5 buildings alone, which are just in downtown, the new project Lofty, which is being sold next to Brickell City Center, is not on this particular chart because it's in Brickell. This is downtown Miami. These 5 projects alone represent a $1 billion investment in short-term rental developments in downtown Miami. You match that $1 billion with the $1 billion plus that the Waldorf Astoria is adding to downtown Miami, and you can see that the transformation of downtown Miami is happening. It's on its way. These are the earlier projects in this great transformation. They're not the last. More are in the pipeline to be announced next year. It's fabulous news for downtown Miami because we all knew downtown Miami's time was coming. Well, it's here. This shows a little historical perspective, and this message is kind of not just for you all Related ISG to know these numbers, but I'm hoping that a couple of bigger developers here in South Florida see this because the demand, the need for more traditional condos is obvious. Yes, there's a market for these short-term rentals, these Airbnbs. They're selling very, very well. Clearly, there's a market for them. But the need that's not being filled as much as it should be is for the traditional condos. Look at this chart. In the 2000s, close to 60,000 condos, traditional condos, got sold and built here in South Florida, Coconut Grove through Fort Lauderdale, in 275 different condominium buildings. That's a lot. Maybe more than we needed at the time, but nevertheless, they all got sold. In the last cycle, from 2012, just under 20,000 condos got developed in 123 buildings. You remember seeing all these cranes in the sky for the last 20 years? Condos, 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 and we needed them. Now we're going into 2021, and this brand new decade. There are less than 2,000 of these traditional condos in development in 11 buildings. 11. Not 123 like the last cycle, not 275 like the previous cycle. 11. That's the hole that developers need to fill. There's not a lot of land left for houses in South Florida. You know that, I know that. The available land is ideal for vertical, for going up. The need is still mostly for houses. I understand that. Most of you get a request from all of your clients for houses. Listen, houses have become popular all over South Florida, all over Florida, all over the United States. In fact, having done some research on this myself, literally all over the world, South America, Europe, Australia, Asia. You know, a year and a half ago, when the COVID virus came into our lives, social distancing were the 2 words that we used all the time. We don't use them so much anymore, but we did then. And the easiest form of residential real estate you can own where you can manage social distancing is a house. Well, social distancing is not so top of mind anymore, but the love of a house has become popular again. Remote working is a ripple effect from everything that we experienced last year. And house is a really easy place to conduct remote working. The joy of living in a house and the privacy that it provides has become very popular all over the world again. So I understand that most of your clients are asking for a house. It's literally happening all over the world. But single-family home inventory is tight. The amount of available land that we can develop houses in here in South Florida will remain tight. So going vertical is the answer to the supply problem because supply shock is real. These numbers say so. We're not building enough of them right now. I hope developers can see the opportunity that these numbers are clearly demonstrating. So that's one half of the coin. In the closing couple of minutes, I'm going to touch on population. I know you know most of this, but it's always worth seeing again. This slide demonstrates what we've seen just in the last 5 years. An average of 950 people per day moving to the state of Florida. 950 people on average per day in the last 5 years. This is not a new phenomenon that happened because of a COVID buyer running down to South Florida to buy their South Florida house in case there's a quarantine again. This is not a new phenomenon from Latin buyers or from people moving from various parts of the U.S. because they're escaping high taxes. This has been going on for quite a while. I've been in business for 30 years, ISG, and I can tell you that the population of Florida in 30 years has probably been growing by 800 to 900 people a day over 30 years on average. In the last 5, 950. That's Florida. South Florida gets half of that. Half of 950 a day comes to Dade County, Broward County, and Palm Beach County. Demand. There is nothing that says that's going to stop. Nothing that says that's going to slow down. Most people come here. Why? Well, we have beautiful weather. So if you have the money to own a second home, or you're reaching retirement age, living in beautiful, balmy, warm weather in South Florida is so attractive. The other reason is since tax reform 17, there's still a lot of people that want to come down here to escape those high taxes, either from the Northeast or California. You've seen them even before the COVID crisis. Now there's a third market that's popping up, driven by this chart. This is an example of some 70 companies from the Northeast that have relocated either headquarters here in South Florida or regional offices all within the last 2 years. 70 major financial firms relocating here, bringing with them lots of young families to raise their children, put them into our schools. Or there are a bunch of younger entrepreneurs that are moving down here to service some of these companies, all looking for business opportunities in South Florida. Another part of the demand curve. In the last 2 years, these companies have moved here. More are coming. More are coming. This is what the results of 2020 looked like. The fastest growing state in the country was Texas by 1,002 people a day. Number 2 was Florida, 904. You know, I don't think it's too far-fetched to project that in the coming years, you might see Florida overtake Texas. It's just becoming more and more and more popular to people all over the world for a variety of reasons. The last two, number 50 was Illinois, the home of Chicago. They lost over 600 people a day. Most of those people came to Florida. New York was number 49 out of 50 states, lost just over 500 people a day. And yes, you know, most of those people came to Florida. It's interesting how the world is shifting, isn't it, though? And then there's November 8th. On November 8th, after being locked down for nearly 18 months because of COVID-19, the U.S. will reopen its borders to those folks that have been vaccinated. So many of you are talking about Canada. So many of you are talking about Brazil. And you should, because they're coming. So many of you are even referring to Europe as well, because France, Italy, the UK, they love South Florida, and they're going to be coming here as well. So, okay, the COVID buyer from the Northeast retreated. But you still have people coming here for all the traditional reasons. You had over 70 companies relocate here in the last couple of years. Those companies brought with them a lot of families. That was never a market that we bragged about much. And now, having been closed for nearly 18 months, we're reopening the border to those international countries that just love South Florida. And what they're going to find is tight supply. Here's the takeaways from the Q3. We are in supply shock, which no longer just belongs to condos. It also belongs to single-family homes. We got to get together. RelatedISG, please, you, me, Carolina Gertz, Liz, Valentina, Sandra Aguela, we all have to get together and strategize how we're going to make the most of a tight supply situation, which is going to stay stubborn for quite some time. The news cycle has begun. Thank God. We need more of them. And we need to find a way to get these buildings sold and built as quickly as possible because we really do need the demand. Population is increasing. We just touched on it for a variety of reasons. It's the funniest thing about South Florida. I've seen this for 30 years. Just when one little tiny market might slow down, there's another one that pops up. It's part of the magic of South Florida. And last but not least, November 8th. It's just around the corner. Get ready. And then, of course, there's Art Basel in December, which we didn't have last year, which I have a feeling is going to be packed this year. And probably bringing a whole other element of surprises, good surprises, for all of us at RelatedISG, including our competitors. So the end of the year is 2.5 months away. I guess I'll be reporting on the Q4 results sometime in the middle of January. I'm looking forward to meeting with as many of you as possible between now and then to talk about strategies. Until then, I'm wishing you all continued success because I know that you have all had a tremendous 2021, and I want to congratulate all of you. Thank you so much. See ya.